The sun dipped low over the vast expanse of the ocean, casting a golden hue over the water as it seemed to stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Beneath the surface, a different world thrived, mysterious, vibrant, and hidden in the shadows. Few had ever ventured far enough to witness its secrets, and even fewer had lived to tell the tale. Among its treasures, one lay untouched, a single pearl, radiant and larger than any other, a relic of the deep past, said to be the heart of the coral triangle itself. It was an object of awe, reverence, and fear. High above the water, the jungle hummed with life, its dense foliage swaying in the cool evening breeze. Hidden deep in this wilderness, a small research station stood, isolated from the world. The sanctuary of towering trees, thick vines, and rugged terrain formed a natural wall between human activity and the untouched wild. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and salt water, mingling into a heady perfume that seemed to pulse with energy. There were only two figures at the station now: Dr. Olivia Stone, a marine biologist known for her obsession with uncovering the hidden wonders of the deep, and her assistant Nathan, who had come to this remote place seeking adventure. They had arrived weeks earlier, their goal set on exploring the deeper ocean and uncovering the mysteries within the untouched waters. But Olivia had always known there was something more, something ancient, something dangerous. The legend of the pearl had drawn her here, whispered across generations of sailors and researchers alike, a legend shrouded in mystery. The pearl was said to hold the key to the delicate balance of the ocean's ecosystem, its light capable of restoring or destroying entire habitats. Yet no one had ever found it. Until now. A week had passed since Olivia made her discovery, hidden deep beneath the surface in a remote trench where the coral reef still flourished. Using a small submersible, she had located the shimmering gemstone, nestled in a bed of soft sand and coral, untouched for centuries. It had called to her, its brilliance too powerful to resist. Yet, as she hovered near it, something in the ocean had shifted, almost as if the waters themselves had recoiled at her presence, and she had felt it. Tonight, as the jungle night came alive with the distant calls of animals, Olivia paced nervously around the station. The sudden onset of quiet, the unnatural kind that crawls under the skin, had unsettled her. The forest, which was usually alive with activity, had fallen eerily silent. There was no rustling of leaves, no chirping of insects, only the soft creak of the wooden planks beneath her feet as she moved. Nathan sat at the far corner of the station, staring intently at the monitor in front of him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but his mind seemed elsewhere. Every so often he would glance up at Olivia, who appeared lost in thought. Suddenly, a low rumble seemed to rise from the earth, a deep vibration that reverberated through the ground. Nathan stiffened, his eyes darting toward the window. Failing exercise. "But was that?" he whispered. Olivia didn't answer immediately, her mind raced. The sensation was familiar, a tremor she had experienced once before while near the trench. It was a disturbance in the very depths of the ocean, where the water moved with a force that surpassed anything natural. She had ignored it then, focused only on the beauty of the pearl, but now she understood. It had been a warning. The rumble grew louder, and the ground beneath them seemed to tremble with the force of it. Suddenly, from the jungle, came a piercing sound, the unmistakable shriek of a bird, not one that was native to the area, but something foreign, something unnatural. The cry echoed through the trees, cutting through the silence that had descended. Olivia's heart skipped a beat as she rushed to the door, stepping into the humid moonlit night. The wind had picked up, whistling through the leaves, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of salt water, far stronger than before. The air had turned thick and oppressive, as if the very atmosphere had become charged. The trees around them seemed to lean inward, as though pressing closer to the research station. From the darkness, Olivia caught glimpses of movement, silhouettes darting between the trunks. At first she thought it was her imagination, but then the sounds began. Heavy footsteps, the crack of branches, the rustle of something large moving quickly. Something was coming. Nathan was right behind her, and together they ventured into the jungle. The path ahead was overgrown, and the thick foliage clawed at their legs as they pressed forward. The air grew heavier with each step, and the sounds grew louder. The jungle was alive, but not in a natural way. It felt as if every creature, every tree, was converging on them. Then they saw it. At the edge of the clearing, a massive creature, something unidentifiable, but with the unmistakable outline of wings, emerged from the trees. Its body was enormous, covered in shimmering scales that caught the moonlight. Its eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. Olivia froze. It was not a bird, not a mammal, but something in between, a being that defied categorization. For a moment, time seemed to stretch, and the creature did nothing but watch them. Its eyes were not hostile, but they were calculating, waiting. It had sensed their arrival long before they had come close. And then the ground trembled once more, but this time, the rumble was accompanied by the rising sound of water, roaring, rushing, pounding through the jungle, pulling the trees and rocks with it. The creature's wings unfurled, and in a single swift movement it took flight, disappearing into the night sky. Olivia and Nathan stood, rooted to the spot, as the water surged forward, swallowing the clearing. The ocean's disturbance was growing. The heart of the ocean, was beginning to stir. Suddenly, the ground beneath them gave way, and they were sucked into the rising waters. The jungle turned into a churning sea, and the once still forest now seemed like an ancient battlefield. Trees fell, creatures screamed, and the world collapsed into chaos. As Olivia and Nathan struggled to stay afloat in the rising floodwaters, a strange sensation washed over them, a pull, almost magnetic, urging them toward the ocean. It was as if the very essence of the earth was aligning, the ocean demanding that they return what they had taken. The water swirled, forming a vortex, and in the center, beneath the crashing waves, a figure emerged. A massive whale shark, larger than any creature they had ever seen, swam in a slow, graceful circle. Its enormous body glowed with the same eerie light that had filled the jungle, and its eyes locked onto Olivia's. She understood then. The pearl wasn't meant to be found. The balance had been disturbed, and the world was righting itself. The whale shark circled closer, its presence calming the water. In the distance, through the chaotic storm, Olivia caught a glimpse of the pearl. It lay at the bottom of the ocean, now lost to the deep once more. She reached out, but the vortex pulled her under, and she realized with a heavy heart that some treasures are meant to remain buried. And with that final realization, the waters closed over her, taking both her and the pearl into the abyss, leaving only the eerie silence of the jungle to mark the place where the ocean's heart had once been. As the storm subsided, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the balance to return. For days, the jungle was still. The frantic rush of the floodwaters had receded, leaving only the marks of destruction. The trees, bent and broken, stood like silent sentinels, bearing witness to the chaos that had consumed the clearing. The animals had scattered, the natural rhythm of the forest disrupted, yet slowly, life began to creep back into the area. Nathan awoke, disoriented and gasping for breath. He had been thrown from the water, swept to the shore of a nearby inlet by the force of the ocean's retreat. His body ached, bruised from the wreckage, but he was alive. The sky above him was clouded, the sun hidden behind a thick veil. His mind raced to catch up with the flood of memories that clung to him. Olivia's last look, the water's violent pull, the eerie glow of the whale shark. Shaking off the lingering fog of confusion, he forced himself to stand, feeling the damp ground beneath his feet. His hands trembled as he pushed through the overgrown underbrush, searching for any sign of Olivia. But the clearing where they had last stood, where the water had swallowed everything in its path, was gone. The once thriving sanctuary had become a wasteland, transformed by the overwhelming power of the ocean's fury. He called out, but his voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence that had settled over the jungle. No answer came. Days passed, and Nathan found himself wandering the ruined landscape. The jungle, once alive with the sounds of life, had fallen into an unsettling quiet. The trees loomed like ghosts, their twisted limbs reaching into the sky. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, following him, but every time he turned around, there was nothing. No animals, no movement, just the heavy air pressing down on him. Then, on the 5th day, as Nathan trudged deeper into the heart of the jungle, he found it. The shattered remnants of what had once been the research station. The equipment was strewn about, cables severed, metal twisted, and yet there was something strange in the wreckage. A soft, almost imperceptible glow emanated from beneath a fallen beam. He knelt down, heart pounding, and carefully moved the debris. His fingers brushed against the cold surface of a pearl, a singular, radiant orb, untouched by the decay surrounding it. It was the last pearl of the ocean, but it was smaller now, dimmer than when he had first seen it. The light that once pulsed so powerfully was now faint, its edges fraying as if it had been drained of its essence. Nathan's mind reeled. The pearl had always been said to possess great power, capable of restoring or destroying, a force of nature beyond human understanding. Olivia had known it, and now he understood too late. They had disturbed something ancient, something that couldn't be controlled. The ocean had responded to its disruption, and now its heart had been returned to the depths, where it belonged. But its absence had left a void, one that could not be filled. He held the pearl in his hand, the weight of its existence sinking into his very bones. He felt its coldness, the emptiness that surrounded it. Without thinking, he stood and turned, walking toward the water's edge. The jungle had become eerily still again, but there was something else now. A presence. Heavy and expectant. The ocean beckoned. As Nathan approached the shoreline, the sky darkened, the wind picking up in anticipation. The tide began to pull in, slow and deliberate, as if something vast and unseen were drawing it toward the depths. The sound of the water crashing against the rocks was no longer a simple roar, but a deep, rhythmic pulse that seemed to speak to the very soul of the earth. Nathan stepped closer to the water, the pearl still clutched tightly in his hand. His feet sank into the sand, the salty mist spraying his face. The ocean seemed to stir, swirling in patterns too intricate to decipher. It was as if the world was holding its breath. Then, out of the depths, a shadow rose. A massive black shape emerged, almost imperceptible at first, but growing larger with each passing moment. Nathan's heart thudded in his chest as the creature came into full view. The whale shark, now larger than any he had ever seen before. Its body was a glimmering mass of scales and light, its eyes reflecting the abyss of the ocean. It was the same creature from that night, the one that had circled them beneath the waters, the one that had risen with the storm. It swam slowly toward Nathan, its movements graceful despite its size, its presence overwhelming. Nathan stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. The whale shark's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, he felt as though the ocean itself was watching him, judging him. The pearl in his hand pulsed softly, as if responding to the creature's presence. Nathan's grip tightened around it, the weight of his actions pressing heavily on his shoulders. The whale shark's gaze didn't waver, its immense body hovering just beneath the surface. It was waiting, and Nathan understood then, this was the moment of reckoning. The pearl was not just a relic, it was a symbol, a key to a delicate balance, and he had been foolish enough to disturb it. But even now, the ocean was offering a chance for redemption. The pearl, he realized, had to return. In one fluid motion, Nathan raised his hand and released the pearl into the waves. The water accepted it instantly, swallowing the gem whole, its glow fading into the depths. The ocean seemed to sigh, a low rumble that shook the earth beneath Nathan's feet. The whale shark circled once more, then slowly drifted back toward the open sea, its enormous body vanishing into the darkness. Nathan stood still, the saltwater mist settling around him like a shroud. The jungle was still again, the silence that followed thick and heavy. He could feel the weight of the ocean's ancient presence, its power now restored. The balance had been returned. For a long time, Nathan didn't move, lost in the enormity of what had just transpired. He understood now. There were forces in the world too vast, too powerful to comprehend, and humans, for all their knowledge, could never fully control them. The jungle, too, had resumed its quiet, but it was different now. The weight of the past hung heavy on the air, and Nathan knew that the pearl's return had set something in motion, a ripple that would echo through time, felt only by those who listened closely enough. He turned away from the shore, his footsteps silent on the wet sand. The ocean had reclaimed its heart, and the jungle, too, would heal in its own time. But as Nathan disappeared into the dense foliage, he couldn't shake the feeling that the ocean would never forget. Nor would he. Nathan walked deeper into the jungle, his mind racing but his feet moving as if guided by some unseen force. The weight of the ocean's power, the strange pull of the pearl, and the silent majesty of the whale shark haunted him. Every step he took felt like a crossing, a passage back from the unknown, a return to the world he once thought he understood. But everything had changed. The jungle no longer seemed like a place of refuge. It felt more like an extension of the ocean, the very heartbeat of the earth beneath him. He could hear the faint rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, but they all felt muted, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath, watching, waiting. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of something unseen. He had no idea how long he had walked, but when he finally stopped, the landscape had shifted. He was no longer in the heart of the jungle, but standing at the edge of a forgotten lagoon. The water shimmered beneath the moonlight, dark and still. The lagoon seemed to pulse, as though it held some ancient secret. The air was different here, cooler, calmer. A subtle breeze whispered through the trees, and for a moment Nathan felt a sense of peace, as if the tension of the last few days had finally lifted. But then, as he stood at the edge, something caught his eye, a faint glimmer beneath the water's surface. It was too familiar. His breath caught in his throat as he crouched down, peering closer into the still waters. The faintest outline of the pearl flickered in the darkness, glowing softly from beneath the surface, as if it had never truly left. His heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't explain it. He had seen the pearl vanish into the depths, swallowed by the ocean's vastness, but there it was, so close he could almost reach it. Was it possible that the ocean had not truly taken it? Had the balance been restored? Or had something far deeper and more dangerous been set into motion? Without thinking, Nathan reached his hand toward the water, and just as his fingers grazed the surface, a cold, powerful current surged beneath him. The water seemed to rise, swirling, wrapping around his legs. He stumbled back, panic gripping his chest as the water churned with an unnatural force. The air grew colder, and for a moment, the stillness of the jungle shattered. The moon was blotted out by a sudden darkness, and the trees seemed to groan as if bending under some unseen weight. The lagoon, once calm, now raged with wild energy. Nathan tried to move, but his feet were stuck in the muck. He could feel something pulling at him, something from the depths, something ancient and powerful. Then, from beneath the surface, a shadow emerged. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the shape of the whale shark appeared once more, but this time its enormous body was different. It was no longer a creature of the sea, it was something far darker, its eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. The pearl was now clutched in its vast, shadowed form, and as it surfaced, its immense body cast an overwhelming shadow over the entire lagoon. Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He tried to move, to run, but the air felt thick, the atmosphere pressing down on him like a heavy weight. He was paralyzed, unable to do anything but watch as the whale shark rose further from the depths, its presence now more than a mere creature of the ocean. It was as though it had become the embodiment of the ocean itself, the ocean's spirit, its ancient power, its relentless force.